If it's north level, then it's not an active document. So I would suggest that that's something that we need to put right there up in front. Who is the comprehensive plan? I have revisions in the introduction. Now, I don't know if you want me to bring them forward now, or it would be simpler if we just talked about the sustainable issues and we just set up a committee if they're willing to sit down with the planning department directly and hash those out. Because otherwise, these people are probably gonna want to go home before midnight. Right, I'm sure there's a couple of speeches they want to hear, maybe, right, better than my speech. So, I'll ask the chairman, do you want to just start proceeding through? Or do you want to, focus on some issues?
Well, so you're saying you have upwards of 1,000 proposed changes, is that?
Does it look like that much?
Right, each page.
We're talking, a lot of stuff is just grammatical revisions. I won't call errors, because one person's opinion versus another, but what my concern was, if they're not clean, they don't send the right message. Right, a case in point, if you look at the introduction, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6th line down, we say, page 1,
yeah.
where we want to go and how we're going to get there. Or, as we could say, and where we've been and what we need to do to get there, which is a more complete statement of what you're doing in the comprehensive plan.
So, Eric, let me ask you a question, just so that I can try to figure out the cleanest way that I think to
Yeah.
handle it, because clearly every member of this planning board, their comments, their questions are valuable and should be vetted. So your changes are in handwriting, is that right? And they've been submitted already to the planning board?
They were submitted the last 2 weeks.
Okay. And
Some of them are a little messy because I didn't want the train coming
Yeah.
back.
And the planning department, have you had an opportunity to review some or all and figure out where you land on them?
Yeah, for the most part.
Okay. Then I would suggest, because otherwise, if this doesn't happen, then the other members of the planning board are going to be in the dark. I would suggest that it would probably make the most sense to have a second meeting of the planning board. And prior to that second meeting, make sure that the version with Mr. Crook's comments and edits on it are made available to every member of the planning board. And then, they can, if they're stylistic and people feel they don't matter, then that's fine. If they think they're better than what was originally proposed, then that's fine. And substantive things, maybe, I don't know, how many substantive changes do you think, Eric?
There were
you
only,
to go through?
I think there are only 2 substantive changes that I really, think we ought to be discussing and hashing out right now.
Okay, so then I definitely think you should bring those up and raise them, flag them, and if appropriate for discussion amongst the members of the board, we can do that. But I don't know how else to try to, in a reasonable way, have everybody go through what sounds like some 998 stylistic changes.
I agree. I didn't want, I wanted to figure out a efficient way to get all this.
But I don't want to disregard what you did. If you think they're improving on the plan, then members of the board.
And members of the planning department, if you want me to sit down with you or have a committee willing to sit down with you, I'm happy to do that. Just, tell me where, tell me when, and
Yeah.
I'll be the.
I mean, I can say for myself, I'm probably, look, I can always be convinced it's an improvement from the draft.
Right.
That I can always be convinced of that. But I don't think members of the planning board are going to want to adopt wholesale revisions stylistically to the document without having seen them. So I feel like the best thing to do would be give everybody an opportunity to see it.
Can do that.
Mr. Chairman, appreciate it.
So that raises the question of, how's everybody's availability to, reconvene, say, in a week and do this again. I'm obviously not gonna cut anybody else off. I want to hear what the public's comments are. I do want to hear your substantive comments, Eric. But are members of the board available if we try to put a meeting together, a week from tonight, say, to review those fairly substantial edits that Eric is proposing?
Yeah, a little bit.
I should be free.
Is that all right with the staff if we kind of tentatively plan to do something like that? We'll see where the rest of the night goes.
Yeah, that's okay with me, just double checking that there's not some other meeting that night.
We want to get this done, obviously, but this is an important issue. It's Eric's right, this is really an important document. So it's important we give it all the consideration that's due, and anybody that went to trouble to heavily comment on it, I'd like everybody to see it.
Monday, next Monday night, looks like. I'll double check on this room, but
Okay.
chances are it's available.
And just so everybody's clear, I'm sure Todd will back me up on this. When these changes are circulated, everybody can't comment online. There's no discussion online. We're not going to risk violating the Open Meetings Act in any fashion, but everyone will have them, and then we can discuss them at the next meeting.
Do you guys want me to make this available Wednesday and or Thursday?
As long as you can be available to the staff make it available to the members of the board.
Okay, and if you need it, just let me know.
So I have a paper copy that Mr. Rose submitted as the index, so I have to draw up, so I can make that available to each member.
Right.
Okay.
Skim or to that digital copy.
Okay.
Could you email if you want?
I would email it all, because I can have on Thursday, so I just distribute them to review it, but.
You do have electronic.
So I have an electronic version now. I can
Alright.
email it to you.
And if it's really possible for staff comments on Mr. Crook's comments to be transmitted in a similar fashion, that would be helpful to it. If you have them, I don't have to create something you haven't done, but if you have a position on any of the proposals, let's crystallize that if we can.
Yeah, I know some of them were definitely just like mistakes that should be fixed.
Okay, well, clearly,
And
one,
some, a lot more were like,
yeah,
you know,
clearly
trying
we
to
do
say
that.
things.
Okay. All right, Erica, does that work for you?
That's fine, that's fine. I much appreciate it. I didn't want to keep everybody here all night asking whether you're supposed to say love or this,
Right.
you know.
That said, if you want to flag for us the substantive issues that maybe we can talk about at a
Okay,
higher level.
well, the first one, and I don't think we need to run to the page, but, yes, if we look at page 19, and we're in the housing section, we talk about the low to moderate income housing. And I think the commitment that we make in this section, I'll just say it's too open-ended. We have a state guideline at 10%, and I think we should be proud of the fact that we are at or near that number already. Right? I think the last number I heard was 9.8%. But in the way we write the tone in this, I think we are saying we're willing to go way up and beyond and over with that affordable housing goal. Now, that's a laudable objective. But when you also look at the next chapter and you think about economic development, I think you need to have balance here. Right? And so I would say that we need to say that we want to maintain that goal of being at or near the state requirement. And then you could put in parentheses, currently 10%. I think if we don't do that, it doesn't mean that we can't go over that. but it also says that we understand where the baseline is. I think one of the concerns I had as I read this is that we don't have the data, for example, for Barrington, right? I am sure their low and moderate number is 0.5%, right, at best.
I don't think it's that bad.
Okay, well, but what I'm saying is, most of the state, right, has not met that 10% requirement, right, or let's call it mandate, right? And I think for us to insinuate that we're willing to go so far above and beyond, right, I think that kind of conflicts with our non-development goal. So I think we should basically say, we're interested in complying and staying in compliance.
How does it conflict?
I'm trying to understand.
Well, if you look at the language, we don't indicate that we've already met, or just about met
Sure.
the 10% requirement. So what I'm saying is we understand that the state mandate is 10%.
Yeah.
And we intend to meet that obligation, right? I think that goes far enough in how we handle this section.
So you want to go above the 10%?
I'm not saying that no, because if we see a project that we really like, right? And it's affordable or low-income housing, right? I don't want to have our hands tied to accepting that if we're already at that 10%. I want us to be able to say, yes, this project has merit, right? And we would include it, right? Or we would approve it. But I don't really think we want to commit to making this an open-ended goal.
Can you focus me, Eric, on the language you're talking about?
Yeah, it's gonna be hard to find this section. Give me a section. It's, 18 today's homes. All right, I'll have to go from the beginning.
I mean, the top of page 20, so
Is it 20?
it says,
1920.
Yeah.
so we write, so ensure whole income benefits when housing is quote affordable, whether it is low, moderate income, or just affordable to be based on your income. Maintaining or exceeding the 10% of the city housing stock at lower moderate income means that as the market rate prices for housing go up and down, East Providence has a core of homes that will stay affordable for the long term. Further, 10% is a somewhat arbitrary number. Statistically speaking, as noted above, 15% of households in East Providence serve severely cost burdens, which means they spend more than 50% of their income on housing. So the need for low moderate income housing therefore clearly exceeds 10%. Is that what you're referring to?
Well, when I guess.
So the city will make a good,
When you're saying that the 10% is a somewhat arbitrary number, it's the state's number we're
Right.
calling it arbitrary.
It is. Yes.
It's
That's,
It's statutory. I mean,
yeah, it's statutory.
It's a
And they've copied from Massachusetts. I mean, there's a whole history,
Right,
but,
but it could
To your
change
point.
next year. And this.
right, it is a mandatory thing. It is a regulatory thing.
So,
It is.
well, I'm saying, so I would change that to say that it's a regulatory requirement. And as the chairman is pointing out, saying currently 10%.
Right, but this plan is gonna be in effect for, what, minimum 5 years? Could be 10.
Hopefully more.
Right.
I think this paragraph is trying to express that the housing need is more than just 10% affordable. The
Right.
need of the residents of East Providence is more than just 10% more than 10% households need more affordable housing. And I think that's what this was trying to say.
Mhm.
So that's why it's just suggesting going above the 10%. Because does that make sense? The statistics say that 15% of households in the city spend more than 50% of their income
Right.
just on
Exactly.
the cost of housing.
Right. Well, I mean, my point is really comes down to saying that it's arbitrary. It's the state requirement.
I can change that sentence for sure.
Yeah, and I think that, I mean, when I look at that, and I say, well, we have all these other goals, right? And I don't want us to give developers the sense that the only thing that we're interested in is low income, okay? Because then they may be thinking of coming in with development that we might find to be very attractive, but they'll go down the road, right? So I want it to clear that we comply with the state requirement, which we do.
Has that happened? I mean, I don't know if there's been a sense from the department.
Looking at the whole housing chapter, it's clear that, that the city's interested in all different types of housing. And maybe that sentence could be sharpened.
Yeah.
To
That's
say
where-
something like,
I don't know if that
further, the
would
state's 10% requirement is a somewhat arbitrary number due to the equal housing affordability or something like that.
Right, I mean, the whole thrust of this chapter is to try to express the state's desire to improve the situation.
Right.
I mean,
And I
that,
mean,
because it's based on need.
right. To be mentioning that 10% is a requirement, but it is arbitrary. You have someone in the state decades ago said municipalities need 10% based on Massachusetts and other states, but 10% isn't necessarily.
But that's a bigger issue than Providence. That's a state issue, right? I mean, if you're saying that the state's 10% position is arbitrary, right? But what we're saying is, we're complying with the 10%. We're doing the right thing in that regard, right? I don't think we want to be in the position to preach to the state that they're being, unreasonable, arbitrary, capricious, as the line goes.
I don't mean arbitrary in that sense, and I don't think the plan does, as in,
Right.
silly, capricious. But it's arbitrary in the sense that most regulations, especially zoning regulations, are arbitrary in the sense that, why should a house be limited to 30 feet versus 31 feet? It's that sort of, and when you get to pick something, I think reasonable.
Well, I'm comfortable with the notion that we just, indicate that that's the state requirement.
Yeah.
Right? And it's not arbitrary. Although I understand your point, that it is kind of arbitrary. But they don't think it's arbitrary. They
Why don't
think
you
it's
just erase that sentence?
Proceed further.
That's-
I'm fine with that.
Yeah.
I just caution that you don't continue to pursue affordable housing options once you hit that 10%. I think that was our concern, because there is a greater need
The
in the
floor,
city.
not ceiling, is the idea, right?
Right.
Exactly. And I just, way you were talking, I just got a little concerned that you were going down that road. I just wanted to be cautious of that. Because there is a great need for affordable housing, not
I'm
only
not-
here. And I
Not
just,
denying that at all, but I
Yes,
also
thank
say
you.
at the same time, we have a document that weighs everything.
it's tough to write this document in silos as it is. That is the
That's true.
biggest challenge of writing these plans, is because there's so many issues that cross. Housing, economic development is a prime example. Those
Right.
two should be discussed together. But
Yes.
the way the regulation is how we have to create pieces like
True.
this. But
Okay,
I do appreciate that.
all right.
Mr. Chairman, when we, over the past couple of years, we have really made some strides with affordable housing, right? We've made some, you
Yeah,
have
there's been some good progress there.
yeah, as far as different size subdivisions and so forth, that are affordable. So we're actually probably going over that more than other municipalities.
Yeah. We don't have the inclusionary zoning requirement yet, but we are working on it with the help of lead planners, our consultant for a grant that's looking at land use regulations. So, we are working on a draft of the citywide inclusionary zoning regulation. We're currently have that in the waterfront district.
I think perhaps a big part of it is that, that guideline doesn't, from a state standpoint, doesn't have any teeth behind it. Perhaps we should be getting more funding than, municipalities that are not making the effort to comply. Because otherwise, I can see another planning board right down the road, right? That they get to that number and then they just lower it past it and go on to the next thing, right? Jones, makes us be subs, right, in their eyes. And that's why it's a concern.
It's also why there's legislative actions now though to change that, so that communities.
Right.
not supporting the
Yeah.
program Can step up to the plate and actually stop building it. But the Providence has always been probably one of the higher performers in terms of supporting and seeing affordable housing development.
Now, something in the action item that might cover that would be to say that the city of East Providence supports those initiatives, those statewide initiatives, to make the low to moderate income housing more sustainable, right? That's probably what it's, like, my underlying concern in all of this. Why are we doing it when they are doing it?
It started out with 25%, now they're looking back to 50 as a step back, 95.
Right.
Those are all active discussions. Various communities are handling it different ways, but I think from our perspective, we're forward looking, and I think that's.
I mean, there's that list that's in the plan, those are a lot of units that are coming up online. Some of them have
Oh,
already
true.
been built, the
That's
Riverside Square,
Yeah.
something, please, so a lot of work. It's tough.
Good, Eric, the removal of that sentence?
We removed the sentence, and I think there's no other concern. Right? I think that one sentence has a lot of underlying stuff, that's why. Yeah, I had one more. This one's much more fun.
Okay.
Much more fun. Okay. I looked at our statement on trees, and I felt it was great, but I was thinking that there's an opportunity for us to go a great step forward.
Can you orient me, just as a page?
I'm looking at page, I'm going to scroll over, page 153. So we've just gone layers ahead. And I followed the sentence at the bottom of the page where it says, in Rhode Island, the RIDM and MIDOT CRCM have permitting authority over activities that take place in or near wetlands, rivers and streams and coastal features like salt marsh, dunes, bluffs, and beaches. These regulations provide tools the city can reference and incorporate as local policy. I then added a wholly new program. Over the long term, it's worth noting that reforestation is the only proactive approach to reversing global warming at the local and state level. Some countries do reforestation. The U.S. Forest Service, do reforestation. The U.S. Forest Service has been replanting harvested forest land since the advent of the multiple use sustained yield silvicultural practices of the 1960s. But in some, China leads the globe in acres of forest land restored and reforests 4.5 times more acreage than the next two countries combined, which is India's second and the United States third. Right? 7 states have also varying reforestation regulations. They are Alaska, Maryland, New Jersey, Oregon, and Washington. California and Idaho. Municipalities also establish reforestation programs, and some of them are very close to home. Massachusetts currently has a municipal reforestation program under consideration for the city of Boston. Cities in Iowa have also reforested areas devastated by flooding and cyclones, and a city in Idaho replaced and abandoned a golf course by flooding its, okay, a golf course with a forest. So it can be concluded that reforestation is not unprecedented or extrajudicial. Right? And I have reference on that. It's from New Lewis. It's a CNN story on October 30th, 2023. I go in to include two different elements for reforestation, and this is above and beyond our city trees program. Right? One of them is a mandate that developers, when they cut down trees, either replace the trees on site or provide funding to a city account so that the city can use that money for reforestation. That's one element of it. The other element of it is that if you look at, and I covered this elsewhere in the draft, if you look at the amount of money that we put into city tree planting, right? The usual type of replanting that we'll do is some kind of conifer, and it'll be about 8 feet high, 7 to 8 feet high. And it's going to cost somewhere from between $400 and $600. You can look this up on the internet right now. You can buy 30 Eastern white pine seedlings for like $5. Right? And if you're talking about it from a standpoint of improving the city from an environmental standpoint, this is where you basically redo the carbon cycle. Right? And we know, and it's mentioned already in the plan, that large parts of East Providence were actually cleared by Native Americans in past generations, right? But the level of clearage was nothing compared to what we've done. Well, because we cleared whole acreages, big farming. They cleared the forest edges to give themselves a better opportunity for hunting, right? I mean, they were simply a different type of society, right? So the opportunity is there. It's very, very inexpensive. It's also the kind of project that would probably generate a significant amount of donation for the benefit of the city. And also, the other thing I was just mentioning with Greg before, there are forests in East Providence that if you look at the understory, there's nothing but brush. Right? In order to set up succession in your forest canopy, you need to find shade-tolerant trees like eastern hemlock, right, just to name one, or cedars, right, that can grow in the understory so that 30 years from now, when the life expectancy of all of the oaks and the ash has long passed, you still have a forest. You have a growing forest. So I am suggesting, I'm recommending that we include that language in the plan, right? It's unusual, it's not revolutionary, right? Like I say, it's been undertaken in 7 states in the country already. Individual municipalities have done it. I think we would have to consider that the portion related to the mandate upon developers that they be planned, right? That might very well require some kind of enabling legislation from the state, but I can't see where reforestation would. So that's my proposal. It's here written in the document, reference it to several other places. Anybody still?
I would defer to Chris on that.
We do mention a urban forestry management plan,
And that's
and
in,
it's not as in-depth as you just gone to.
I think that stands by itself. I think that's a very good plan. But this is a different type of, you use the same people. I mean, it's, we have our conservation committee, right, in how I wrote the enabling portion of it. I figured, well, let's give it to those people, right, because it is an element of conservation.
So
right?
would this be on existing city land? This
It-
reforestation?
It most usually would, but it doesn't necessarily always have to be,
Mhm.
right? And by the way, there's also some federal tax incentives
I mean, this,
that can be available.
so you mentioned Massachusetts as well ahead of us in a lot of programs, and I know that you're, I
Well,
know.
they should be, so that's
But,
no.
and I know, but they have a lot of money to dedicate to forestry
Right.
programs and municipalities and all of that. So there is sort of some examples to look to. And there are like Cambridge or
Right.
Cambridge, a lot of, in the Boston metro communities, they do urban forestry is becoming a huge need.
Oh, it
It's
is.
all pavement.
It absolutely is. And, you know, obviously I have background in forestry. Urban forestry is one element
Right,
of that.
and it's
Right.
choosing the right trees,
Right.
like there's a whole science, I get that, and
Right.
maybe there's a way to enhance. I think we want to be, this plan, want to be mindful of the plan and the level of detail that we put in it, and just to sort of take a step back, and what are the important pieces that we can talk about here, and sort of lead the direction, because those are the kinds of things that's an action item. The level of, do research, find examples. You did half of it right there.
That's actually the way I wrote it.
Yeah, so I
that's-
mean, you can set the stage, I think that's what you're trying to do, but
Right.
can we sort of, it is a need, and we, trying to incorporate it into a forestry management plan or developing ways to manage the city's existing conservation areas, do just that, or the
Right.
parks, planting trees, so I'm trying to, it's already a lot in here, this is a big plan, and trying to manage the content of it.
Right.
And is there a way that we can sort of fold that into this urban forest section? I know you were talking about it,
I put it on page 153,
right,
but
because
we
you're
could
thinking
easily
from the
put it into
regulation.
that other,
Yeah, you're
yeah.
thinking of the regulations.
right, we could easily move it.
But I think the concept of it
So,
is.
right.
What, just a flag, when we receive a copy electronically with Eric's comments, that will be in there. correct?
Yes,
Okay.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, he said it.
And one of the things that I, so in order for everybody to have the benefit of that, they need to be able to see it, I think.
Right,
It sounds to me like there are a great deal of factual representations, information included in the statement that you read, that while I respect enormously, I wouldn't want to simply take at face value. Those types of representations, in my view, would need to have been fully vetted.
Right.
And I don't know whether that's an appropriate place to have that level of detail in or not. But it's going to be important to hear back from Krista and Dean as to whether or not they think that some of the factual representations are even accurate. There's no way for me to know.
Yeah,
Take what you're saying face value, it might be 100% true, but I would want the professional team who vetted that information.
I had thought of adding bullet points, reference this, that, here's the Oregon law, and da. But then, I say, well, what long enough as it is, right? And frankly, getting the proposal out there, and like you say, include it as an added section, in the centuries area, it accomplishes the same thing. Right?
And then you can use it, we talk about, areas of the city that need more trees, and that it enhances that discussion.
Right.
But trying to recognize that addition, but sort of managing the content that we can put in the plan.
I understand that, but let's also take one step further. This is a 20-year plan.
Yep.
Right, they're looking at. So if we get those 2,000 seedlings, and that just costs $5. So if we get 30,000 seedlings, and, obviously different species, by the time this plan is past its death, those trees are going to be like 15 feet high. And that's why it's a benefit, and it is an environmental benefit, but it also would make us a more green city, which is, why I put it there in the first.
Sure.
I don't like trees.
So
okay.
thinking about implementation, we need someone to do that, right? So one of our actions is to hire a city forester.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
Is that, I'm sorry.
Forest, sorry, we've been pushing for that.
Flagging. So that is I think so that's why we have the high, medium, and low priorities. We have to, yes, it is a 20-year
Right.
plan, but we need to make progress. You can't just say, okay, reforestation plan, let's do it. We need to have, the city needs capacity. So let's start with hiring a city forester, and under their purview, under the next one is a forestry management plan, a restoration plan. Like, you know what I mean? I think we need to.
You sold me.
So I think that's sort of how, these are great ideas, and it's important to have those big ideas. Like, that is so important, but we also need to figure out how are we going to do it.
Right.
I mean, the city's already struggling to do some things. We don't want to add more work to somebody that's already, how can we build capacity at the staff level? And that's a city forester who's an arborist or has a degree
Sure.
in forestry or sciences or something. I think that's the first step, and we don't have to include anything in everything. It's nice to do that too,
Right.
because we're always gonna find something that we miss. Like this, this action plan doesn't, that's just not all we're gonna do. There's always an opportunity that's gonna come up that we didn't think about before, and we're gonna seize it. So just because it's not listed doesn't mean it's not gonna happen. But we wanna make sure we have that vision. We wanna reforest our city. We wanna make it greener. We wanna make our residents healthier, cleaner, all of that. And how we do that, here are some examples of how we can do that. It doesn't preclude us from doing a reforestation plan. That's all I just wanted.
That's good. All right. I think I've run out.
All right, that's good.
No, let me put it this way. Don't give me a second because I'll find something.
You said two.
Well, we'll be back next month, so you can go another bit. Any other, is that good for tonight? Eric? Want something else?
I'm fine unless I knew it with the public as well, for sure.
Any other members of the planning board have any questions or comments or want to address any aspects of this tonight?
Sure.
Okay, so who would like to be heard first? Come on up. Seal, can you just state your name for the record?
Certainly, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Candy Seal, East Providence resident, 1340 South Broadway. I have not 1,000 recommendations. I have one, which is simple yet substantive, I believe. I already discussed through email with the planning department about this. I just wanted for the record of this meeting. The final draft plan, on page 233, under the waterfront district, mentions of general land uses of each of the waterfront sub-districts. At the bottom of the page is meta comment. It mentions that a permitted land use is a hotel. That language also appears in the East Providence Revised Code of Ordinances, section 19-480, the use permitted, meta comment, a hotel. Those are both incorrect. On July 20th, 2021, when the East Providence City Council met to revise the zoning ordinances and amend the comprehensive plan, they specifically said, it specifically moved and passed unanimously an amendment of the ordinance, chapter 19, 472, entitled subdistrict defined as Article 9, that's better. Amend the use tables under hotel, changing the use from additional to no. So there's no hotel. There is no hotel permitted in the Metro District.
This is one of those things, such a large document that ended up being in there kind of.
I think in other places I saw that it was deleted.
Yeah, it needs to come out. Yeah, it's one of those where you have that much regulation.
I did make a note of it. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Yeah, and I double checked the use schedule today, the official use schedule of the city, and use for the med concepts.
It is prohibited, okay.
It is a prohibited use.
Correct.
Didn't we have the discussion fairly recently where it was to make it specified, but it wasn't in the meta comment.
It wasn't, right, it was in some of the city
So like Warren Avenue.
conventional zones, right.
So it sounds like you win that battle.
Yeah.
No, we appreciate that. Thank you.
I didn't plan that. But two others are small things, small details. Maybe substantive. In the existing comprehensive plan, there's a historic resources map that mentions the historic Veterans Memorial Parkway. That is not included in the draft. I believe that in the corresponding map, in the new draft, the Veterans Memorial Parkway is not mentioned. I think it should be.
The paragraph that was in the box that explains the Vet Parkway in 2010, 2015. There's like a narrative that kind of talks about the Vet Parkway.
I didn't write down which map it was. I'm sorry. I should
It's in
have.
the text.
Right.
There's a map that historic resources.
Right.
And the Veterans Memorial Parkway is there. And again, I didn't put the exact map in the draft, but it's not there. And secondly, under recreational aspirations, at the time, 3 18-hole golf courses were mentioned in the existing comprehensive plan as assets that should really be considered and protected as best they could. Now there are 2 18-hole golf courses in the city, and I didn't see any mention of them. Whether that's still important, I think it's important to the community, whether it's important for the comprehensive plan, I'm not sure. I just wanted to mention that. So it's the no hotel, it's the Veterans Memorial Parkway, it's the importance of the 18-hole golf courses for recreational activity. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Zip. Chris, I see you writing vigorously.
I'm just making a note, yes.
Let us know what you think.
Yep.
Okay, who's next? Ma'am, welcome.
Be here. Kim Francis, 715 Bedford Memorial Parkway. Thank you, Kim. I have been reading about the transportation connectivity section, and I will say, my opinion, great job, really great job. I have not seen a more thorough plan done by a small city like this in a long time. So I really do appreciate everything you put into it and worked on it. Sounds like you did a lot of work. On page 85, we talk about principal arterials. And list Henderson Bridge, Veterans Memorial, all the streets. The one thing that I have as kind of an issue is that out of all of those things, Henderson Bridge and Veterans Memorial, the only ones with no crosswalks. There's no crosswalks on Veterans from the beginning to the end. And personally, I have been affected by this. I have a cousin who got hit by a car on the street. I see dead deer, I see dead this, I see dead that. Not as much deer anymore because of all the construction, but it's kind of traumatic. As fast as people drive on that road, I can't get from my house to the bike path without walking in the street and stopping traffic, and it's that bad. So I would like to propose that somewhere in this document, we talk about pedestrian safety and push it to the higher priority. So as we develop the east side of Veterans Memorial Parkway, which is going to be, who knows, 100 houses or 1,000 houses, I don't know yet. Those people are going to have to cross the street to get into the bike path. The people on the bike path are going to want to cross the street to get to the golf course, whatever else is on the other side, stores or whatever. We need to make a provision. And I'm not sure where in here we prioritize that, prioritize pedestrian safety. But I'd like to see.
There's not a crosswalk anywhere on this parkway?
Start at the beginning, and go to the end. Not one. There are some lights at the entrance to.
South Broadway area?
No, Kettle Point.
Okay. Yeah, I know that.
There's a light there, which works sometimes, not all the time. The problem is that it's curvy, right, and they're coming around fast, and if someone's in the street, they may not be able to stop. I almost got hit myself one time.
Yeah, there's a couple of places where you mentioned that it would fit in pretty, on a first look.
So, just for the people who are especially on the east side of that, who want to use the bike path, but don't want to drive to the bike path, that kind of makes no sense.
No, it could be. That's a really
Defeats the
good point.
purpose.
That's a really good point.
We have that. So that's kind of my initial point. My only other initial point is a little bit
As a pedestrian,
pedestrian, Henderson's fine,
Yeah.
but it's a bridge, so I get it. You have to have some kind of sidewalk, but Veterans has grass on the side. It has all kinds of things that we could do, either tables or little bumpy things. And I know it's a state highway.
What's involved in doing that, in adding a crosswalk? So what is that process?
The process, well, I mean, it's a
It's a
state
state highway.
roadway.
It's a state
So once it's, when they're doing improvements, that's when you sort of get it in their ear. Jim's nodding his head, but that's what you do, like if they're gonna resurface or, but that would require a light. Because you bring that up and now I'm thinking of even that new way to get to the behind in Kettle Point, there's that little,
yeah.
so now there's even more desire probably to go over there.
Yeah.
Like that would be an ideal place
Crossed over
to
many
put
times
in.
from the golf course, like,
But even that at Line Ave is pretty,
yeah. if you line
because
up-
it's a straightaway and people are gunning it, yeah.
Yeah, it's just a tough situation, and with the additional development.
Yeah.
You're gonna have more cars.
Yeah.
There's gonna be more cars.
And then the other side of waterfront,
I've done
that will happen eventually too, or whenever, where it's been cleared years ago, eventually that will. So it's a great, it's great, yeah.
Wherever we put that as a priority, my suggestion was the developers need to kick in some kind of
Yeah.
additional planning
it. So I-
to be sure you can cross that road.
And
And I don't know
It's
if
a
it's.
great plan. I don't know whether it's appropriate to compliment or not, but.
I think it is. I mean, we
Yeah.
do mention roads that,
Yeah.
that have concerns. I don't see any reason why we couldn't add it. I know that I'll just say in Providence, like they put in temporary speed bumps.
Yeah, the little
The
table.
little bumpy ones. Yeah, on South Main Street, which I cross that all the time. It's a nice, and they have crosswalks.
They have crosswalks.
So,
It might be difficult because it is still, with or without the bridge, it's a major feed to 195. It's what takes you all the way to the end and in. Now, whether or not that stays, I don't know. But because you have that kind of traffic, I don't know if you want to slow it down
But I
that
think there's
much.
gotta be a way to put some, I'm gonna write it, and so our sub is Bowen, we have a transportation consultant on this, and I could touch base with them on just, if it's just highlighting it as an issue,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
I can talk with the department. Thank you for that.
And you might want to say also, when you mentioned Veterans Memorial on page 85, that it is a state highway.
Yep, yes, good
State
point.
State road grade, yeah, you just have to be.
Because that just impacts.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that, one of the things that's going on now is the Metacom redevelopment is transportation and traffic. That park is very much a big part of what's being reviewed by the Water Commission.
Okay,
And that is not finalized in terms of what is gonna happen
right,
there.
right. I
So
understand
there
that.
could be active discussions from the waterfront's perspective about whether or not something like a crosswalk or additional crosswalks would be.
Yeah, I would think that, like, you know, making it a priority for all the homes that are gonna be in there, to be able to access bike path would be a pretty significant consideration.
Just a very question for Jim, just in the same vein. Is it RIDOT that ultimately has the final say of any changes to
Right,
state roads?
is the authority on the roadway, and then they listen to Z Highways. They provide their advisory opinion to RIDOT, and RIDOT is a great deal of weight on scenic highway. What's review.
Just a couple things of general interest in cities due to, there's currently a Safe Streets for All transportation plan being developed now. And actually, Ripton is taking the lead, and they're doing it for different communities across the state. So they're working on a citywide plan to enhance transportation safety in the city. And there's actually an online survey now that they're doing to get people's input as to what they think the biggest transportation issues are in the city and what might be done. And I don't know the specific website off the top of my head, but you just search for like East
There are
Providence.
brochures
Safe Streets for All. Oh, true.
down in the lobby, when you're going out, there are brochures on the table there, SS4A, and just stop, there's a little QR code you can scan, there's some card things down there too.
And that's something there will eventually be a citywide plan to try to see what we can do to address some of the transportation safety issues. And another thing is the citywide bike and pedestrian plan that we're just starting to do with the help of the state grant. So that's just getting underway, but there'll be different public input opportunities for that also. And they'll be ongoing for like next year and a half or so as that consultant looked at ways to better connect to the East Bay bike path and whatever other connection might be.
It is mentioned, but very vaguely on page 279, the action items. It says to identify needs and prioritize roadways for the installation of new curbing, sidewalks, and safety enhancements. Right, throughout the city. That's, crosswalks probably should be written there as a standalone item. But the other part is that that's a medium priority. And I would think that public safety should always be a high priority. So perhaps we can up that.
Maybe it has to do with the speed and the volume of the road too, because some of the small roads, you can deal with it, but on a big road like that.
You know, to agree some kind of a comprehensive plan, you don't want to get too specific,
Right.
because if you do, then you kind of let yourself in, so you leave sometimes things a little more open, so you have to go to certain different roadways, you kind of have that decision process.
I just want to think, so we made the transition from Metacomet to Metlinks. And I'm just real disappointed that we lost the Metacomet name. Because that is the history of East Providence. And not only that, a Native American figure. So I don't know if there's any way that the Metacomet name can be reattached to that space. It's probably out of our hands right now, but I just want to say I'm disappointed. I don't think I did. Get this in the back.
Who's next?
Thank you.
Hello, I'm Peggy McKenna on Sutton Ave. Page 186, there's the table for identified flood hazard areas. And I'm requesting that the intersection of Sutton Ave and Irving Ave be included, as well as Alexander Ave and Taunton Ave at Cora Street. All those are flooded and traffic has to stop.
186.
Yes. Table CC.1.
173 if it's the PDF, PDF or PDF. 173.
And Peggy, did I speak to you on the phone this morning?
I was
Right,
wondering.
that's correct, yeah. And I took detailed notes of everything
Okay.
Nick said. I forwarded it to the planning director. We'll be sharing that with you.
And it was kind of disappointing to not see it, because I did email or fill out a questionnaire with the Department of Public Works, and I never heard anything back. So I appreciate you emailed me right back. So, just those three that I know of. But it's flooded for years. The last storm that we had, I stepped off my back deck. Did you see the photos? Did you? I stepped off my back deck in my backyard to ankle deep water. The storm we had last year, I went down to my basement. It looked like if there was fishes out there swimming, I could see them through my basement windows.
What was this again? Was it
It's Sutton and Irving, that just say, Taunton Ave and Cora Street, and then Alexander Ave.
Right.
And those are routes that the fire department and the rest of you go around to go to the highway.
Gotcha.
All right, thank you.
Well, very much.
Chris, I think you talk about climate change and how additional rain events are causing a lot
Yeah,
more.
we're gonna have more rain.
Yeah.
Well,
And-
it's
and
getting
Eric-
more
yeah.
severe. We've always had the flooding.
Yeah.
I grew up in the house I live in.
Yeah.
We've always had the flooding, but now it's,
Yeah, we're getting more rain.
I think you're gonna see more areas that will flood that never flooded before. That's the other share.
but my house and my neighbor's house, we're surrounded by water. Oh, okay, then.
Yeah, sure, yeah.
If you need more, I got more. See it on the news now too.
Hi, Sue Leggett, 147 Riverside. I have a more of a general question. First, I want to thank everybody because I think the comprehensive plan is wonderful. I read through it. This is a general question. If a person or a group of people are attempting to build a project that will have a zoning change that goes against the proposed comprehensive plan before the plan is approved, is there anything to stop that project?
Can you repeat that again?
I'm trying to keep this, at 500 foot level rather than go down, okay? So, if people are attempting to build a project that probably entails a zoning change, as is our plan now, against a comprehensive plan, before the plan is approved, is there anything to stop the project?
Is it against the old or new comprehensive plan or both?
I know it's against the new one.
I believe that one of the people involved said that it is green now.
It is zoned green now, it's a park now. And so it's up to put a building in it.
So, Mr. Chairman, traditionally, ma'am, these projects come before our board to see the consistency with the comprehensive plan, whether it be the 2010, which we're working on now. And it appears that we probably won't have the new one completely done until it gets submitted to the state, correct? So you're probably looking at the beginning of next year.
City council.
City
Council, then,
council
okay,
adopts
so a
it.
few months. So traditionally, a project would come before this board, and we would make sure it's consistent with the comprehensive plan.
If there's a lot of public pressure to have the project done.
In my 12 years, I've never seen that here sitting in this seat. I haven't personally. Because I wouldn't, and I know the chairman, he's been here 20 years.
25.
We would never allow that. There's no pressure to us. We kind of look at each one individual and we take our staff is great. Some gentlemen here have been here for a long time. And their work really makes our work easy. Because they do all the hard work. We get recommendations and so forth and so on. So I hope that answers your question.
To some extent.
Another thing that a developer might do is, if that's the case, they could also petition to change the future land use map of the comprehensive plan so that their proposal would be consistent. So that's something else they could do, and then the board and the city council would have to weigh that.
We're not in favor of the project, mind you.
Right.
So, okay. Thank you.
Welcome.
Going once, going twice. Okay, so, Chris, that was great. Do you have anything else you want to discuss tonight? It sounds like we've reached some general consensus. We're gonna try to adjourn this meeting and then reconvene a week from tonight. Are you available?
Yes.
Okay, good. And it would be very helpful if you had been able to take a look at Mr. Crook's substantive comments, particularly the one on the reforestation program. And then the rest of the board members will have had access at that point to his more stylistic changes.
So would you require a new document from Monday night,
From,
the 26th?
from you?
Correct.
No, I think at this point, we just want to know what people, what the recommendations with regard to what you propose.
Oh, okay.
It would be helpful to know what the, outside consultants have to say about these various proposals. Including the point that we will take tonight with regard to the.
I mean, those editorial changes can easily be.
The flood zones, I see anything that's wrong, we want to correct.
Yes.
And anything that is a good idea that hasn't been previously thought of, we'd like to include.
Sure.
If there's, if it's an appropriate place to include an aspirational statement regarding the inclusion of safe crossing of the parkway, then that sure sounds like a good idea to me. Trying to get anything else tonight.
Mr. Crook's 2 points I think we can address. I don't think there was anything that came that was in no. I mean,
So in theory, we can put a
In
bow on
theory,
it
we're all
a
gonna-
week from tonight and
Yes.
make a
I just-
recommendation to the council.
I just would be able to produce a new track by Monday. That's
No, I wouldn't expect you to. I think if we vote on strategic direction on
Okay.
Monday, right? That would
Yeah.
probably be good enough.
Good enough.
Okay.
So maybe we just do a list of all the changes that had come out from public comment and from the board, and just have that inventoried for you, and you all to confirm that we're putting all the right pieces in. Maybe we could do that.
So having said that, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to table the recommendation of 2024 East Providence Comprehensive Plan for City Council adoption until August 26th, next week.
Second that.
Motion by Mr. Grant, second.
If I can interrupt that, it is a public hearing now, so.
So by public announcement, I'll just note that it's being continued.
Yeah, I'll make-
That saves us any of the advertising.
Right. So to make sure we're continuing the public hearing.
Yeah, I'll do that by public pronouncement. I think that covers it. Okay, so the motion was made to table an advisory recommendation to council until next Monday night. We will reconsider the issue. Correct. And the motion was made by Mr. Grant, seconded by Mr. Crook. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Guys have it. And for the benefit of the public, I'll now make a public announcement that this meeting will be, the consideration of this agenda item will be adjourned this evening, and it will be taken up again a week from tonight at 7 o'clock, same room. Thank you everyone for coming out tonight and your questions. Wow. Three.